What's going on, everybody? John Stamper with John Stamper Media, and excited to have this opportunity to talk with this amazing team from Alta AI. A lot of exciting things going on with Alta AI, and like it is with a lot of technologies, everybody, there's the technology, but then there's the whole team behind it. And as so many of us know in dentistry, what really helps these practices get this technology into their practice so that they can utilize it for what it's used for, and most importantly, take care of their patients is the team that is typically behind these startup companies. So very excited to be with Matt Porter, who is a member of this Alta AI team. And as I am learning, this team is wearing a lot of different hats, and so I have a feeling that Matt is doing a lot of things on the technology side. But we're not going to kind of put out the formal CTO label. We're just going to kind of talk all things technology, but most importantly, what he's all excited about. So Matt, it's great to see you. How you doing?
Doing great. Great to meet you, John. I've heard great things. So excited.
Well, thanks for taking a little bit of time to kind of give us your insight of what this has all been about and all of that. So I think that's kind of maybe a great place to start. Maybe share a little bit about your story, some of the work that you've done, in the dental industry, on the technology side, and then we'll kind of weave ourselves into some of the things that you're doing at Alta AI and what you're most excited about.
Sure. My entrance into dental was at Dental Intelligence. So I had never worked for a dental industry, never, not even really familiar with that space at all. And Dental Intelligence was my first foray kind of into that, all things technical in the dental space. Before that, I really had spent 20 years in telecom, essentially. So it was a great change of scenery and a very new set of challenges and issues. And to be honest, it was very refreshing to go into the dental space. I think there was such an opportunity to make a huge impact. I think it was kind of an area that was technology starved from a certain perspective. Like, I think telecom kind of suffered from technology overload, and how can you apply all this different technology to it. But I really felt like whenever we came into dentistry, or when I came into dentistry with the group of Dental Intelligence, like it was great, because it was like it was easy. It was an easier way to make a big impact by applying technology to something that for years had been somewhat neglected.
Yeah, it's interesting. This is kind of a bold statement, but I feel like we are now in what I'll deem like technology, maybe 3.0 in dentistry, right? Like we had like the early days of a lot of the dental equipment. And then, in the last 7 to 9 years, it feels like there was a lot of software technology companies that came into dentistry. And now we're venturing into this AI space, and it kind of feels like dental technology 3.0. But you're so right, Matt. I think what's been fascinating, I know from my perspective, I've had the honor to speak with so many of the different companies in dentistry. And I think what's cool about the technology that you mentioned is that it flows through to ultimately create great patient experiences. And so, as you know, it becomes a win-win for the dental practice and the clinicians, becomes a win-win for the patients. And what's really interesting, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on, is this win-win between the companies, because at least in the software space, right, you get this opportunity to have these conversations with the end user, the dental practices, and get their feedback on how is the tech working? How can you tweak it? How can you change it? How can you create a great experience? And I think that's what's been so fun to watch with the dynamic nature of, software technology and dentistry. And of course, now we here are with Alta AI, and you guys are on to some new ventures, which is
Absolutely.
cool.
Absolutely. I think that one of the things that I tell people about, like whenever I first moved into dental, that was super. It was kind of interesting but gratifying as a software tech person. That whenever you come from telecom, and it's a lot of commodity type functions and features where I'm going to mute that so that doesn't bother me.
I can lead you into that question again if that helps you. So you can, is that
Oh,
good?
it depends on how you want to edit it. I mean,
Yeah.
you can lead it again. That's fine.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll just kind of do like the last part of what have you. Yeah, I really feel that what's exciting is we're kind of like this dental technology 3.0 is the impact between the technology is having on the end user, the patient, the clinician, and their teams, and then more importantly, the dental company. Where now, as you know, Matt, the dynamic nature of software allows a company to be able to work hand in hand with the clinicians, get their feedback on the product, how it's performing, make tweaks if necessary. There really is this cool element of that, where I would imagine from your perspective, you guys get a lot of feedback and sometimes early on, which is encouraging.
Absolutely. I mean, everybody's very anxious and hungry for how can technology make their life easier. And I think that, like you mentioned, this may be like dental tech 3.0. Well, I hadn't been in dental that terribly long, 8 to 10 years. So I've only been kind of at the 2.0 and beyond. So I'll have to take your word on if there's this kind of the third pillar of change that's happening. But it's great. I think that, when I first moved into dental, like one of the most gratifying things about being in this space was just that feedback and being able to give people technology that actually makes their life better in a measurable way. Um, from a back in my telecom days, it's like, okay, you measure success by number of telephone calls, number of meetings, number of voicemails. Like, it's really hard to say like what I'm doing is actually making somebody's life better. It's like, yeah, we created more meetings. Well, we probably made the world a worse place. I mean, because there's more meetings. But it's like, yeah, we had billions of conferencing minutes and tons of
Yeah.
phone calls and voicemails, and it's hard to get really satisfaction over something that you don't know that it's really benefiting them. And that was the greatest thing about, the hearing the stories in that space, or in the dental space, specifically around how did you make my life better? And a lot of it stems around the fact that we gave you your time back,
Yeah.
and your nights and weekends are now open because you have time to focus, not spend so much time and effort on, some of these mundane things about, crunching numbers for your practice, measuring your team, doing all those things. So that was really kind of, that's one of the things that's awesome about the dental industry is there's a lot of hunger for technology to improve their lives, and they're also very vocal and give you a lot of great feedback in order to do so. So
Yeah, no question. And yeah, like I said, I mean, I'm kind of going on the limb and calling it Dental Tech 3.0. Maybe we'll start something here. I
you
think
probably
where
did.
that I think where that comes from is because I feel like Matt, some of the early stages, like again, I'm going to go back. I think it's relevant to this conversation to the early days of Dental Intel, and I feel like there was this initial stage, which was the practices even recognizing that the amount of data and how it could all be aggregated together and put in front of them as a dashboard, like that in itself was like one, bucket that had to be like acknowledged, right? It was almost kind of like this overwhelming, feeling of, wow, like we actually have this data. And it took a while, as you know, for them to know what to do with it, right? So it was almost like, okay, this is great, but what do we do with it? And so I remember the tail end of, kind of where we are now with Dental Intel, but even going back a couple of years of like now the realization of how you all built in not only here's what we have provided you, but then here's also some solutions on how to use it. And so when I think about 3.0 and I think about I feel like dental practices are more well versed that like to speed up that curve of like once they recognize what the technology can do, I'm excited because I feel like they're going to be able to, they know now how to apply it hopefully that much quicker. And so I'm just curious on what's been the feedback because I know in speaking with Rob and Kelly and Jake and Miles so far of the feedback you all have got from the hygienists as you've launched Alta AI and what you're seeing in regards to that curve per se.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think you're very very accurate in how you kind of characterize the dental industry. I mean, it was early on at Dental Intel, the first few years anyways, it was tough. Like, you're having to sell people on how this can really make a difference, and it was hard, right? Like, the people are resistant to change, and they're, skeptical about technology, and things are way different now for what we do. And just, our voice perio charting application is there's a lot of we don't have to spend as much time educating the patient about the patient. I'm using the word patient as in our customer,
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
customer,
Yeah.
that we're trying to help you with your sickness and your aches and pains. We're trying to help you. And before, it was definitely a lot harder, but I think people are more receptive to how technology can play into that. And the feedback is, it feels so much faster. With we had at Dental Intel, like, the majority of our tools were kind of back office facing, and they would improve the lives of kind of back office business management type of people. And this is exciting because it's clinically focused, and it'll make the lives of the clinician easier. And
Yeah.
I think that's what's, from a back office perspective. If you're trying to make it easier to run the business, identify where your aches and pains are, and as far as that goes, the clinician needs to have extra time to spend to do what's expected from them, from their back office people. And I think tools like this will give them a lot more time to be to return that in whichever way the business wants them to return it in. They'll have more time to spend on that thing. I think from a patient standpoint too, like, one of the things we've noticed is from a perio charting perspective, is there's a lot of it will help them actually do a more comprehensive perio exam. um, there's a lot of corners that get cut whenever you're dealing with constraints such as time or manpower. I don't have an assistant to help me do this, or I don't have time to fully devote to this. And hopefully these clinical tools can help them, not only save time, but also be a lot more thorough in how they're doing this, which the patient outcomes, as far as oral health, will are just a side effect of that.
Yeah, no question. Such good insight. It's interesting. I feel like it's like a perfect storm, Matt. It's the practices, like Rob and I were speaking, have struggled the last couple of years with staffing, and so they're trying to find ways, as you mentioned, to still serve as many patients and help as many patients as they can, with, in many cases, less team members. So you have that. I also feel like finally in dentistry, there's this awareness with patients of the oral systemic link, and they're recognizing how important their health is, the healthy gums and all of that. And so we talked about on one of the other episodes just this excitement of the patients getting involved. Like, I think it's some of the new AI case acceptance, platforms out there now, where the patients are actually able to visually see like what is being shared with them. Often I'll use the analogy of dentistry and getting my oil changed. And for years, people are like, John, where the heck are you going with that? Like, what do you mean, the car and the dental office? But if you don't understand an engine, as you know, Matt, and you go in there, you trust the technician when they say to you that like something needs to be replaced, and then they bring you that invoice with how much it's going to cost. You're just like, okay, like, I know nothing about this engine, I'm just going to trust you. And so I think about patients for all these years going in, being in pain, knowing, that they were being recommended of things that need to be done, and them visually being blind and not being able to see that. And so, of course, we've seen this advancement with AI. And now, of course, with the perio voice charting, I get excited because I see a world where patients now are listening and asking, like, what is one? What is five? Like, what does that mean? And they're getting involved in the process. And I feel like when you kind of combine that, like you mentioned, along with making it efficient for the practice, it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, I think the technology can give the clinician more time to spend with the patient to actually explain what matters here, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to all your time is sunk by, going through these exercises that take longer than they should. And I think that anybody that's worked in dentistry knows that these practice management systems and EHRs that are involved here are, they could be better.
Yeah.
And so just navigating that, getting data into there, pulling data out of there, they're not the greatest systems, and they're definitely not, they're not focused on the patient being able to understand what they see out of there. So hopefully, the time that we return to these clinicians, they'll get to spend and give even more, insight into the oral health kind of impacts that arise from any kind of diagnosis, for that matter.
So I get the opportunity, Matt, to speak with all of your colleagues before we get on and do these. And of course, I asked everybody, all right, so want to learn a little bit about Matt, like what he's doing. And of course, the whole feedback, when it comes to the technology piece of this, like Matt is the guy, right? Like he's the guy, he's excited about all this technology stuff. So now that I have you, I want to ask you, like, what is it like to be able to go into your world, the technology world, with all these ones and zeros and kind of find a way to make this stuff work, but then finally launch it, get actual like response back from dental practices when you kind of pull all those worlds together. Like, it's one thing when you're in sales or you're in marketing and you're having these conversations, but you're not really necessarily behind kind of like pulling all this together on the technology side. What is that like from your perspective when this thing kind of, and I know it's going to evolve over time. There's a lot of exciting things you guys have, but just talk about that a little bit and kind of the excitement of it becoming a reality.
Yeah, well, it was kind of interesting because I've been, in the kind of speech recognition game for close to 30 years now.
Okay.
And, and most people will be like, speech recognition hasn't been around that long. Well, it has. Like we were, my first job out of college, I worked for kind of a unified messaging type telecom application, and it was voice recognition to read your emails to you, or text to speech to speak your emails back to you, and navigation. So I've actually been in voice recognition for that, and I say voice recognition because that's what the industry was called back from 95 until
Right.
2005. And spent it was real. What was really interesting about that is going back into that technology space and seeing how much it had
Mhm.
evolved,
Yeah.
because it was amazingly challenging to do speech recognition and that type of application back in those days. Really low level, um, spare you all the details, but it was crazy. And the kind of the change, whenever I first started looking into this, it was like, wow, there's a lot of really sophisticated tech out there to
Mhm.
apply that,
Mhm.
it's a lot faster, and I won't say easier because a lot of the same challenges
Yeah.
exist, but it's faster to iterate, it's faster to kind of come up with a solution for this than it ever used to be. So that was number one. Like it was like I hadn't done this in a long time, super familiar with how it works, like at
Yeah.
the very lowest levels. And I'm like, yeah, it's amazing, some of the tech that's out there, and of course all of the huge AI companies that exist now, they didn't exist back then. Like
Yeah.
it was a very like nichey community of, if you were struggling with someone, if you were struggling with something, and to find anyone that had any kind of insight into how to tackle that was next to impossible. And so
Yeah.
that's one of the things that's very, as we got into this kind of Alta voice thing, it's like, this is, I don't want to say easy, but it's like, yeah, it's so much
How about
easier.
this? How about this analogy? Square peg, round hole, but like the square peg has like some olive oil to make it go into that round hole a little bit easier, right? Like just
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily. It's you still have to customize it as you know so well to
yeah.
the industry and make it seamless. And especially like, back to what we were talking about, I feel like the expectation, which is a good thing, right? You talk about the early days of dental intel and almost kind of like this, what do I even do with this? It was almost like kind of ahead of its time. I feel like we're in a time now for dental practices where like they've been able to use a lot of these technologies, and so the bar has raised, right, as far as like what their expectation is. Then you think about the technology they use outside of the dental practice and how that's been seamless by a lot of these companies. And so, yeah, like definitely, you guys coming into this, the demands are high to create something great, which is awesome. Well, the last thing I wanted to ask you is, when you look out over the course of the next 6 months, what are you most excited about?
I think it's hearing all those stories, like we did at Dental Intel, about how this actually made my life and my patient's life better. And I don't know exactly how those stories are going to be worded, right? This is way different. Like it's
Yeah.
really easy. Or, none of this is easy, but I mean, at Dental Intel, it's like you could hear testimonials from people about how I can now coach my kid's soccer team.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to work until 7 o'clock every night.
Yeah.
And those are great,
Yep.
stories to hear. I don't know necessarily that that's the type of story that we're going to hear with a clinical tool. You
Mhm.
know, if I were to take the Amazon approach and write the testimony, Amazon has this approach where they used to like write before you even write one line of code, write what you want somebody to say about your
Interesting.
offering. And if I
Interesting.
were to do that right now, right, the story that I would tell would be that I made your clinical. I don't know what the words for that word be, but it would be that I made your clinical life easier and gave you more time to spend with the patient, whether you used it to, educate them, as far as what's their oral health situation, or if you just be connected with them and spent more time, being
Mhm.
friends with them, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
that's right now. I think it made my life easier. I think would be the one sentence explanation for that. But I
Mhm.
think it's early,
Yeah.
and time will tell. Like I think that as I write a different kind of fake testimonial about what we've done 6 months from now, I think it will be different. But right now, the testimonial that I'm seeking is that you made my life, made my clinical responsibilities a lot easier to accomplish.
Well, and I think what's exciting about that is the fact that, as you know, in a dental practice, they see so many patients. There's an aggregator effect, right? I mean, I think like like, it's unknown right now to your point. There will be little wins, but when you take a little win times 15, 20, 30 patients that are seen a day and you aggregate that over a week and over a month and over a year, I think that's what's really exciting is where something like this clinically will make such a huge difference,
Yeah,
which is awesome.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time. Congrats on the launch. Excited to see what you guys all have, do. It's been so great to speak with everybody from the team, and I look forward to your point. Like once it gets out there in those dental practices, like you said so well, we're going to get that feedback, and I have a sneaky feeling that it's going to be very rewarding, and the clinicians that you all serve are going to be very thankful. So, uh, congrats.
Awesome. Great talking to you, John. Nice to meet you.
You as well, Matt. Talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye bye.